Even today in South Africa, working class women, and the working class at large, but in particular women, are still confronted with unspeakable levels of violence in their homes, in their communities and places of work, and also in their movements. For them, the constitutional guarantees of equality and non-discrimination are just rhetoric, and this has translated nothing other than poverty and inequality that we see on a daily basis. Since 1994, every year we've been celebrating the 9th of August in honor of those women who led the struggles against the institutionalized racial discrimination. Over the last century, repeated efforts have been made to restrict the rights and freedoms of black women in South Africa. The government of that time restricted black women's access to towns and established stringent controls for them when they were in those towns. One of the other measures imposed then in 1956 was the carrying of passes by women. Authorities attempted to close down squatter camps and informal settlements around towns. Women were forced either into controlled townships or go back to rural areas, Abama homelands. Women of that time refused to accept their inferior status. How did they do this? How did they refuse this inferior status that was imposed on them institutionally? Many defied these laws by moving to the towns, where they tried to create a better living for themselves, one in search or wanting to unite again with their partners who were accommodated in hostel dwellings in these cities. And in the main, women were in search of employment as domestic workers in the agricultural sector, and these are the women that I'm talking about that were not skilled. So if you have just carefully listened, that they moved from rural areas in search of work, also wanting to unite with their partners. Does this sound similar to what the conditions are today? It does indeed, and we'll talk about it when we're talking about today. It does. Just to go through the periods of struggles that they were engaged in. In 1925, which you'll find in your notes, as Karen's saying, in 1925 in Bloemfontein, I've just pulled out some of the third kind of important periods that they were involved. Basotho women staged passive resistance, sit-in against police raiding liquors. As a way of living. In the late 20s, again, black women in Germiston formed the Women's League of Justice, staging protests against the imposition of lodgers' permits. The period between 1928 and 30 in Potchefstroom, women such as Josie Palmer led protestations against the municipal authorities. And in 1930, the free lodgers' permits was revoked as a result. So in the period 37 to 43, years leading to the formation of the ANC Women's League were marked by women's resistance, door-to-door campaigning, leading in unions like the Garment Workers Union. In 1943, the ANC Women's League is formed. In 1954, there's a formation of the Federation of South African Women. And this was, I think, in an effort to consolidate the struggles that was led by women. In 1956, Women's March, on the 9th of August, 20,000 women marched to the Union Building to protest against the passes. And I think as we see, hence we have in 9th August to celebrate those struggles that were waged by those women. So throughout 1957 to 1958, the government pressed on with its piecemeal offensive, picking up individual areas and groups which it considered vulnerable. This offensive by the government was defied when local branches of the ANC Women's League undertook a campaign of civil disobedience. So through the period of 57 to 58, the government pressed on with its piecemeal offensive. This effort by government was stopped by when local branches of the ANC Women's League undertook a campaign. The Federation of South African Women and the ANC Women's League gave wholehearted support to the new grassroots campaign. And as these struggles were intensifying, women engaged robustly in the struggles. The only thing that the leadership of the ANC then was concerned about the costs of legal defense and about which body had the final authority to sanction such campaigns. It consequently called off the campaign in its third week and announced a new phase of multiracial demonstration that ended the Women's Anti-Pass campaign.